Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And before we get into tonight's episode, just want to remind you to hit the website, snagsandsilky.com. Buy the merch. Check out the playlists. We're going to have some pretty cool playlists up there from this episode. General Blues History playlist and a Mudcat playlist. So check that stuff out. What do you got, Silky? Take it away.
So tonight's episode, we've been very fortunate to have Mudcat with us out of Atlanta. So the episode is on the blues in general. We cover quite a few artists, but for anyone who's not familiar with blues, it'd be hard to imagine. But blues originated in the deep south of the U.S. in like the 1860s. It involves spirituals, work songs, field hollers, chants, narrative ballads from African-American culture. And this would go on to form jazz, R&B, rock and roll. Willie Dixon, a very prominent writer for blues music, involved with Chess Records in the 60s. He's quoted as saying, "The blues are the roots, the rest are the fruits." Anyway, W.C. Handy, father of blues, he published music in the blues form, a lot of sheet music in the turn of the century. So he's known as the father of the blues, famous for St. Louis blues, Memphis blues, Yellow Dog blues, a lot of great sheet music published at the turn of the century, like I said. Then you've got Mamie Smith is touted as recording one of the earliest blues songs, Crazy Blues, in 1920. And then, of course, Bessie Smith. She was one of the most popular artists of her time. She recorded from 1923 to 1933. Only about 160 songs. But she died in a car crash in the late 30s, a lot due to racial issues where you have an accident, somebody rolls up in an ambulance, no, we don't take black people. And so allegedly she died on the side of the road, what could have been just a bad accident. She ended up dying. But the one thing I wanted to touch on is Alan Lomax. He was an American ethnomusicologist. He went down into the South, did a lot of field recordings of folk music of the 20th century. He discovered Robert Johnson, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, Burl Ives. I know Snags is a big fan of Burl. Flora McNeil, Lead Belly, Muddy Waters, a lot of people. And then as you go further into the blues, Robert Johnson had recorded in 1936 and 1937 in Texas. One famous thing is the story of the crossroads. The idea being you go down to this one specific set of crossroads at midnight, and Satan or Papa Legba is going to show up and tune your guitar, and you sell your soul, and you become a famous, a famous musician. But I would say Robert Johnson is one of the most important blues people. He went on just his 42 songs. He influenced Eric Clapton. Leonard Skinner has covered Crossroads. So many bands, Led Zeppelin, just myriad of bands, Cream. Anyway, so I've talked long enough. We've got Mudcat on. Let's hear a little bit about your history, and you're quite the aficionado on just the Piedmont blues, more country blues, acoustic, usually acoustic if I'm not mistaken.
I'm a fan, that's for sure. I'm no expert, but I'm a fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the Piedmont, like Reverend Gary Davis, Archie Edwards,
Yeah.
Blind Boy Fuller, Barbecue Bob. It's mainly the East Coast, Appalachian Mountains, Central Georgia to Central Virginia. Is that what you've kind of found?
Sure. You know, you include North Florida and parts of Alabama, all the way up through Washington, D.C.
Okay. So what, where did you kind of start with your blues influence, or what are your,
how did it all begin? I did read that you used to kind of do busking, street musician stuff in New Orleans and New York. How did that all start out?
Well, there wasn't really there weren't any opportunities to play. I was just a kid, you know. I had to learn someplace, and I think the street is the busking is a really good education on how to build a show, you know, because you have to learn how to build a crowd if you want to make any money.
Mm-hmm. How to stir people up, get them interested. Yeah,
absolutely.
Where'd you grow up before all that?
Tybee Island, Georgia.
Oh, Dag, okay, yeah, that's a cool area.
Yeah,
I went down on there, went on vacation in Tybee Island once with my wife, and I are driving down there, and we see the minor league baseball stadium, and it says Tybee Island Sand Gnats.
Oh yeah.
I was like, why is their team called the Sand Gnats? And then
they got a new team now.
The Savannah Bananas.
Yeah,
Savannah Bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were wondering why they were called the Sand Gnats. We get to the hotel, spend the night. We wake up the next morning to go walking on the beach. We're walking on the beach. We're like, nobody's on the beach. Why isn't anybody on the beach? And literally, like 15 minutes later, we're both like, ah! Sand gnats eating us alive. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta let the sun come out.
Yeah, it's they're down here in Florida. They're called no-see-ums. And they will light you up if you're out in the evening or in the early morning.
Yeah. You got to use Skin So Soft.
Yeah. It's
I got sunburned and eaten alive by sand gnats.
Hey,
but anyway,
you had to bring Skin So Soft.
So you get the
see, everybody on Tybee had the Avon. They would come and they'd sell you Skin So Soft because that keep the gnats
keep
off.
the sand gnats. See, that's a good tip.
So you have the Sam Gnat
That's why I'm
blues.
saying it. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah.
So you grow up in Tybee, and then you end up in New Orleans and New York. Did you just hit the road with your guitar, or how did that happen?
Well, for New Orleans and New York, I was a ward of the state of Georgia, you know, so my state of Georgia was my legal guardians. So I was eligible for Pell Grants that I didn't have to pay back, you know, and then unfortunately I was able to get some loans to go to school. So I went to the University of New Orleans for a short while, and I got I had to leave there about something about marijuana. And I also went to school in New York City at the National Shakespeare Conservatory, and
it's prestigious.
But I was playing on the street at the time, you know, Bleecker Street and on the Staten Island Ferry, and sometimes I would cross over and bring my assignments into, you know, they want me to do some Chekhov scene, or, you know, go home and work that and come and do it by myself, you know, for class. And sometimes we were more free to pick our material, you know, so I would just do what I was doing on the street, in class, and then have like these master teachers, you know, pick it apart.
Are you referring to like Anton Chekhov? Like
yeah. Yeah,
was-
some
it
of
was-
our some of our teachers were the one of our professors was had originated a lot of the Chekhov roles in America. You know, when they were translated
That
in
method
New York.
acting stuff that book is amazing. That's great.
How did you get the blues bug? How to go from acting to playing the blues?
I don't know. I'll have to guess that it's a natural desire to like kind of reach a root for something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of I think you already mentioned that it's the roots of all American music.
It really is.
So if you're exposed to it, I'm listening to country music in the 70s and
mm-hmm.
my dad's garage, that's Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash. And,
yeah, all that Sun Records stuff is really white boy blues.
Yeah.
And that stuff is just epic. You had your Chicago blues with like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Little Walter, Willie Dixon. I mean, that's all Chess Records. But Elmore James.
Yeah, I mean, you said, oh, Robert Johnson is great. He influenced Eric Clapton. Well, he influenced Elmore James.
Right.
And Elmore James really electrified it, and
mm-hmm.
they took it along.
Yeah, and you had T-Bone Walker really brought.
Muddy Waters was just the second generation. You got Tampa Red.
Yeah, there you go.
And Tampa Red took Muddy Waters in and showed him around and let him stay there. Tampa Red wasn't from Tampa; he was from Georgia, but he went up to Chicago and he really laid the groundwork for everybody. So everybody says Muddy and all them, but it's older than that.
And like Charlie Christian influenced Chuck Berry.
There you go.
Was a major influence on Chuck Berry, but
there you go.
Yeah, that's some deep stuff. That's awesome. I've heard of Tampa Red, but I did not think of him.
Oh, he's a genius. You need to check him out, man.
Yeah. No,
he's on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hudson, I can't remember what his
real name is.
Yeah. But he was a great influence musically, and he helped out a lot of musicians that came into Chicago. And he was also an A&R guy for, I can't remember who, like Bluebird or somebody.
Okay.
So, but his slide playing, was greatly influential. And then he began, some of his first records were he along with Thomas Dorsey, they created hokum music, with Baby's Butt is Good, Honey, but it's tight like that.
Okay.
So within 1 year, you got like 5 versions of that by different people, including them doing version number 2 and 3. And they built this whole genre called hokum blues off of this one song. And later on, and they're nasty songs. It's all double entendre, and some of them are really out there nasty.
Oh, yeah. Lucille Bogan's Shave 'Em Dry Part 2.
And so now you got Thomas Dorsey. He becomes, 5-10 years later, he begins his gospel career in Chicago and becomes the father of gospel music.
Nice.
Precious Lord, Take My Hand, stuff like that.
That's great stuff. So after like the 50s with Chess Records, you get into the 60s. The 60s revival, the American Folk Blues Festival toured Europe, went through England about from 62 to 68. And because of those first shows in the early 60s, all of your the heavy, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Fleetwood Mac, the Animals, the Stones, the Yardbirds, Rod Stewart and the Faces, the Who, John Mayall, Alexis Kerner, all those bands early in the 60s.
They were exposed.
They were exposed to these guys coming through.
And sometimes they had the pleasure of backing up people like Sonny Boy Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
You do a whole career with him.
Yeah, I've got
black artists been coming there since the World War II. You know, some went there during the war and never left. You know, there's a restaurant in Paris that was opened by a guy from Atlanta, and it was still open about 10 years ago, and they have music there every night. You know, a lot of people never left. There's Italian songs about the black soldier that never, you know, nice. And the child is black, you know. And
a lot of the jazz guys you say went over there, right?
Yeah,
because jazz was huge in Europe, and those guys were treated like gods over there.
And what did jazz begin? How did jazz begin? What was it at the very beginning? It was European. It was popular European music, jazzed up.
I see. Nice.
And then you know, it became. Then they were like, well, let's write our own songs too. And then at some point in the 50s, they had that whole movement of like, well, we don't want nobody dancing to our shit. You know, we're gonna make some stuff that's like just so fucking heady that people won't know how to dance to it.
Right. Charlie Parker.
Like, why would you do that on purpose?
Right. Well, like Django Reinhardt is amazing.
Yeah, but it's also that's also swing. It's swing music. It's swing dance. It's like for people to enjoy.
Right. Right. That's awesome. But yeah, the late 60s just was on fire with blues. I think that was a huge shot in the arm to what, you know, we all assume is classic rock and roll. It's really the blues is just such a pure place to discover. For me, I was in my early teens, and I had read Hammer of the Gods by Stephen. I want to say I can't remember who wrote that one, but Hammer of the Gods, the Led Zeppelin bio, and in there they're referring to Robert Johnson, and I'm like, I gotta track this guy down. And you know, there was a really cool record store in Atlanta called the Metronome, and it was down near Ansley Mall. And I would go in there, and they had a huge record area right in front. And when you walked in, it was a blues section. And it just, to me, every record in there was like somebody that you weren't, you know, it was like so much to discover. I was such a hungry pupil, if you will. But I picked up an Elmore James collection, a Muddy Waters Greatest Hits, and a Willie Dixon album called I Am the Blues. And that really started my collection. But, you know, I wanted to get deeper into some of the earlier artists. And there's just so much out there to you know, different pockets of amazing artists.
Well, that Bessie Smith collection that Columbia put out, that really opened up everything, because they realized, because we didn't have the reissues here. Stuff was really hard to find.
Sure.
Now our friends overseas, they have, you know, I go see my friends in Paris or whatever, and they just have like all this American blues stuff that we hadn't had reissued here yet. You know, but that Columbia, they put out that Bessie Smith, and they were like, wow, we can make some money. And
it was 5 volumes or 6 volumes.
Yeah. And then they were like, well, let's put out Robert Johnson. And damn, wow, we sold 1 million. And that started the whole thing. And you know, what's great about Robert Johnson, so many things are great about him as a, you know, as a musician, performer, writer, all that stuff. But I mean, historically, the reason we're still talking about him, I think, because there's been a lot of great artists that we've never met or we'll never know. Right. But he's important because he was able to translate stuff and put it in form that really moves people. You know, his songs are one. He was the first generation of artists to listen to other artists on records. So he knew what the format was. He knew that it was just a couple minutes and you tell a story.
Right.
Now, because all those guys are used to playing a song for 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes, as long as people are dancing, and just throw different verses in there, and they're going to be
just making it up.
It's just not going to be one story. It's going to be like, and sometimes if you really want to write it down, it might even contradict each other. But he understood this thing about, which later Willie Dixon, you know, did the same thing. He created songs out of a lot of stuff that already existed. He'd put it under one. He put it under one idea. You know, so, and Robert Johnson is so great, you know, his singing and his guitar playing, and he was able to absorb, he's able to listen to other people. You know, they talk about him being able to listen to something while having a conversation, and then later on pulling out that song note for note, and you didn't even know he was listening to the damn thing. So he's able to absorb all this music, and then he has all this experience entertaining people, and then he gets on record and he's able to put it in a way that really reaches the American psyche, because it reaches people in a short story, and it's really strong. And Blind Boy Fuller is kind of similar as far as you know, he gets all the credit because he's such a great artist and he had all these great songs, but he got it from Reverend Gary Davis, and he was able to take all these other people's songs and put them together and put them out in a way that people could really absorb that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that he created all that stuff, but he didn't.
Kind of gets credit.
A lot of those,
but he should, but nobody should take any credit away from him, because he influenced so many people, you know.
Oh yeah.
But Buddy Moss was before him, you know, so he didn't come in a vacuum, you know.
With Robert Johnson, when I hear him play, the first time I heard that that first album that was released in like 61, 62. And I think it's like Crossroad Blues starts the album. I remember thinking, who's playing with him? The way he plays is just amazing. He almost has a rhythm guitar behind him while he's playing the lead, you know. It's just amazing.
Mississippi John Hurt does the same thing. You listen and he's got this bass line going with his thumb, and then his other fingers are doing these melodies. It's amazing.
Dance music.
Yeah.
It's to make people dance.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
It's just amazing though, that ability where, you know, when you hear it, you're like, who's playing rhythm on this?
They dance, they're gonna drink,
they're
gonna spend some money.
They're gonna fight.
They're gonna pitch a wang dang.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. I don't think your goal is to make them fight, but that does happen. But your goal is for them, you know, is to people have a good time, and the women to dance.
Yeah.
What I love about blues music is men and women. There's some great female blues singers, which is a fine line, because that can go right into your torch song jazz singer, you know, Billie Holiday or you know, Sarah Vaughan, some of these other female artists, but more blues is like Coco Taylor, James. But it's a fine line, like where, you know, jazz and blues run so close together. So, but
so tell us about the history of the Piedmont blues as far as you kind of understand it, like the earliest cats on record, kind of like what Silky did with this general blues history a little bit.
Well, Piedmont blues is a term that was coined by Peter Lowry, who British fella who came over and did a lot of folk, did a lot of field work and put out a lot of records, and spent a lot of time here in the Southeast. And I guess Piedmont blues is more characterized in general by being more expansive than Mississippi blues. You know, in general, very generally speaking, you know, black people were more isolated in Mississippi than they were in Georgia and South in the Carolinas. And
you had the train that would run all the way up to New York, so they were more.
You know, the plantations were like there was no town, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Where in Georgia and in Carolina, you had some communities that were more autonomous, you know.
Right.
And there was a especially great area from here in Atlanta up to Greenville, South Carolina, out towards Augusta and stuff like that. There's a great area where it seems to me that there was a lot of communities were more independent or autonomous and able to like be more independent, you know, away from what white society was doing all the time.
Right.
And white society being on their backs all the time.
So who were the earliest Piedmont blues recordings? Like how did it start?
Well, I guess you have Blind Willie McTell in the 20s. You know, he's one of the earliest, you know, because you talk about Mamie Smith doing crazy blues. I can't remember what's that, like 1922?
1920 is what I looked
20?
up.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
Blind Boy Fuller, Carolina Slim, some of those guys.
Yeah, those guys are later.
Oh, they're later? Okay.
Yeah, Blind Boy Fuller's like 30s.
Okay. And Barbecue Bob is a great one.
Now, he's 20s. Barbecue Bob was one of the earliest people to record.
What if Petey Wheatstraw? Is he
I think Petey Wheatstraw is Mississippi. I'm not sure where Petey Wheatstraw is from. I really don't remember.
He's another one of my favorites.
Tennessee or something. The Devil's Son-in-Law. What'd you say? Tennessee. Yeah, it was Tennessee. All right.
Tennessee.
Petey Wheatstraw's Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah.
El Condor. El Condor wants to make an appearance.
All right. El Condor's saying hello. Say hello.
Okay.
Hey.
Goodbye.
Right.
Peace.
Nice. Yeah.
So
Petey Wheatstraw, those Diplomat records. Is that what it is?
Pink Anderson, he's one of the earliest ones too.
Yeah. There's a series.
1928, I guess.
There's a series of blues reissues that just has like Barbecue Bob, Petey Wheatstraw. It's Diplomat Records or something. I
guess anybody can put that stuff out since it's so old.
But they've done a good job. Usually you can trust those as clear recording. It's not like some of those that are on like Yazoo records where it just sounds so bad, the recording quality.
Well, you have to get the right ones because they update them as they find new 78s that are in better condition.
Yeah.
And I would hope that they're updating them now that technology has stepped up. You know.
Yeah.
We had some from the. Who was the? I guess it's the Smithsonian put out these primitive recordings, like 1800s and stuff, and they have a system with it's a virtual needle. Yeah, so they can fix anything, you know. So they scan the record or the where they had those
grooves.
I'm sorry.
They scan the grooves on the record.
Yeah, but I forget what before records we had those. I forgot.
What cylinders. They were like cylinders.
Yeah. So you know, they scan that stuff and they're able to fix cracks and everything, you know, and no surface noise, of course. Mm-hmm. So, and that was 18 years ago. So that technology exists.
Wow, that's
cool. No excuse for any of those records to sound like that no more.
Yeah, just like early on, you'd buy like the cassettes or something, and it was like so poppy, and it was really tough to listen to.
Well, I'm sorry for your experience with Yazoo,
Yeah.
brother. I got some really great Yazoo records, a whole bunch of them.
Oh, good. But well, you know what I'm talking about with some of those. They're just poppy. It sounds like they're singing behind a waterfall and real tough to enjoy, you know. But
it's Document Records. Silky is the.
That's who I was trying to think
they put out a lot of collections. You look up some of these cats on Spotify.
Well, the difference is there's going to be a lot of the same songs, but the difference is Yazoo is picky and they'll put out a record, and Document puts out everything, all the takes.
Yeah.
You know,
volume,
and you'll be going along great. And it's like, wow, I can't believe that was recorded in 1932. That sounds pretty good. And then, like you say, it's like so scratchy. It's like, why'd you even bother putting that on there? And it's because it's the only, because they knew it existed, because it's documented as existing, and the only copy they had was some, was these really bad.
Yeah, that's tough. Especially, some of that stuff, it may come down in price now, but at the time, like when I was like 15 and I only had, you got $20 and you're like, wow, let me see, this looks great. Because I was really into 30s and 40s, Big Bill Brunzi, some of that stuff. And I was dropping money I didn't really have on music, instead of eating. So, I still kind of do that, but, there's just so many great things to discover when you start, going back before your time to check out a style of music or something,
So eventually back to your career, Mudcat. So you grew up in Tybee, you go to college and a little bit in New Orleans, then in New York, you're doing the busking. How did you end up in Atlanta? I'm looking at your discography online. I'm seeing the earliest album is 1994, Mud, Sweat, and Beers. Was that the first one?
Yeah.
So how tell us the story from performing on the streets in New York up until Mud, Sweat, and Beers. Bridge us the gap in the Mudcat history there.
Well, I'd been traveling around and busking, different cities, and I decided I needed to sit someplace for a little while and set some roots as a musician, as a entertainer,
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of friends in Atlanta and I had some good friends going to Georgia Tech. So I came here and I stayed on my friend's floor, got a job, and I was busking I was trying to find. I found out there weren't really places to busk in Atlanta. I mean, there was little 5 Point. There were places that you'd have fun, but you really wouldn't make money. And the places that you would normally busk, like in front of a big building downtown or whatever, they kicking you out. They don't like you around. So you had to wait till like little festivals, arts festival or whatever festivals in the park.
Yeah.
Dogwood Festival
or when game is letting out, you got 20 minutes as people are all like filtered to go past this one area by a parking lot, or et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Then you ended up here, and then you ended up when did you start
building the band at Fat Matt's Rib Shack? They had a jam on Wednesday nights. I'd go up there and I'd meet some other musicians, and it was a great community up there, and it was what was happening. And then I took over as the jam host band
at Fat Matt's.
And built a band over there. And then Ellen Webb, owner of Northside Tavern, her father had died, and the bar had come in under her and her siblings' possession. So she wanted to turn it into a blues bar or a strip bar, whatever. You know, one or the other, whichever one, plan A and plan B.
Right.
And she loved music, so she came to Fat Matt's and checked us out and asked me to come up there and play with my friend Evan. And really loved the place and just hit it off with the people and started playing there regularly. And Ellen had a lot of confidence in me for some ideas that I had, like bringing in some of these older players that I've been meeting, like Cora Mae Bryant and Beverly Watkins and Frank Edwards. And she had a lot of faith in me, so she backed me up, you know, so I was able to pay these people. But it always paid off, so we didn't have to lose money, and it just built from there.
How long did that residency last? You were there. I mean,
I played Wednesday nights for 25 years.
Wow. Dag.
Yeah.
Fat Matt's Rib Shack is just an epic little spot. Everybody sits elbow to elbow. You're eating really good ribs and just good Southern stick to your ribs food. And then there's a tiny little stage, and they'll get up there and play blues. Behind them on the wall is this mural, what looks like Mount Rushmore, but it's Muddy Waters and B.B. King. Love that restaurant. Living down in Florida, I miss spots like that are just so. I would say Atlanta is just chock full of these little amazing little restaurants that have so much personality. I really love Fat Matt's Rib Shack.
Yeah, that's what you know, I love the Mount Bluesmore up there, but everybody's from Mississippi, and it's like we're full of amazing players here. That's why that's why I had all those paintings put on the wall at Northside Tavern. Those are all Georgia people and my influences. And I was like, yeah, these guys are fantastic. Everybody knows them. But how about these Georgia people who are just as great or better? Some cases, you know.
Yeah.
So why don't we celebrate them? You know.
Didn't Mississippi John Hurt end up in Georgia?
I don't know about that.
I think he spent time up in Washington D.C.
Oh, okay.
With Archie Edwards. That's why he and Archie share so much.
I thought his like Avalon Blues album, I thought he recorded in Atlanta. Maybe not.
Well, maybe not that I know.
They brought him up to DC. Yeah, they brought him up to DC.
Well, Silky's talking about the commercial recordings, which would be the 1928 with the Avalon and all that.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know where those were recorded. They very well could have been recorded in Atlanta because Atlanta was a great hub. That seems like a long ways for to come, but maybe he was nearby anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I swear he did something up in Atlanta, but I could be mistaken.
A lot of great players recorded here because you know, they brought the equipment down here, and there'll be meetings. You know, they put out ads in newspapers. People come from a long ways away to come record. You know, be hillbillies and Mexicans and blues guys and all kind of people. Now, sometimes the Atlanta guys went up in the 30s, would go up to New York, or late 20s, go up to New York to record. You know. And because that's where all the equipment was, but then after they found it was cheaper to get some equipment that they could carry and come down south and like take up in a hotel or something like they did with Robert Johnson.
Well, I like the story where Robert Johnson is playing like a house rent party or a little barn in Mississippi. And a lot of these guys would ride the rails. They'd jump on the trains and just go across, get off wherever. And Robert Johnson ride the blinds. Yes. Robert Johnson would get off the trains, and he was famous for picking like the ugliest chick in town. And he would lay up with her, and she would feed him and take care of him. You know, and all he had to do was, you know, throw some ugly girl some dick, and then he'd come back into town and she'd take care, you know. So he made a habit of
make her feel good about herself. Make her feel wanted.
That's it. And then nothing wrong with that.
That's a more tactful way of putting it. Thank you, Mudcat.
But it caught up with him.
Well, there's more to it than the dick.
Yeah.
You know, you could only screw for so long, and then you gotta make up the other time.
Sure. But it caught up with him, and he was poisoned, they think, by probably a jealous boyfriend or husband that realized that Robert Johnson had.
They say it was the bartender at the place he was playing. The guy who owned the place.
Oh, I missed that one. That's
yeah, and they sent him the bottle. You know,
somebody slaps it out of his hand
because it's the wife. Yeah, Sonny Boy said, "No, man, you know better than that. That's dumb. You know, that's how people die." And so, and then they bring him another one, and he says, you know, and he tries to tell him not to do it. And he said, "Fuck you, man. I'm gonna drink this. Don't tell me what to do." Next thing you know, the scenes about him howling like a baby.
Yeah, 3 days laying in bed, dying. Pretty awful. But Lomax had come down looking for Robert Johnson for a huge event in New York. And
the spirituals show in New York City.
In like the
swing to spirituals. Yeah. 1939.
39. And
1941.
He ends up getting McKinley Morganfield that went on to be Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
That was right after he just missed. It's right after Robert Johnson died, right? He came down.
Well, Johnson would have died in 38, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
A year or two.
But he was looking for him, and that would have. I think that would have. Robert Johnson would have just blown up. That kind of.
Yeah, they say he was playing with a band.
Oh, was he?
That's how I read that. I don't know if that's true or not, but he was apparently playing some stuff with a band and plugged in.
That would have been amazing. But
so hip us to some people want to check out Piedmont Blues. You got Blind Willie McTell. You got
Blind Boy Fuller,
Barbecue Bob. Tampa Red was from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And hip us to some other names. Who else would you want people to check out if they want to check out the
Dick
history?
Anderson, John Jackson. Oh goodness. Curly Weaver.
Where was Charlie Patton from?
Charlie Patton was from Clarksdale, I think. Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charlie Patton got early.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff that sounds so bad. The popping and the recording quality.
There's some stuff out there that sounds great, man. What's his name? Jack White. Yeah, he put out he re-released some of that document stuff, and it's of Charlie Patton. I think it's like 5 volumes on vinyl.
Really, I was on that
and every bit. So he picked all the good stuff, and I guess they also probably have some newer versions and probably clean some stuff up. But everything sounds amazing on that.
Yeah, he's done. He did a thing, 2 box sets. Paramount, all the Paramount has recorded all the way back early 1900s, and his 2 volumes that are massive. Jack White put those out. The Paramount Story 1 and 2. There's a lot of good blues stuff in there.
That makes sense.
Paramount. They started out as a furniture company, then they became a record label, then they started making.
Yeah.
Jack. Well, record players were furniture.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's 100%. And they would hire musicians like Blind Boy Fuller or whatever to play in front of the place.
Wow.
Bring musicians. Bring people in to buy some records.
Interesting.
And that's where you bought your records. Was it like
Yeah.
You bought your records at the furniture store.
Yeah. Tower
was
Records originated at the back of a bookstore that his father owned.
So
one of those people who decided that there's blues and there's hillbilly and there's whatever. I can't remember how they broke it up. And to this day, we're still suffering for that.
Yeah, that division of music. Yeah.
Put Hank Sr. over here, put
Roscoe
Johnson
Holcomb
over there.
And blind, Roscoe Holcomb has got a lot more to do with these guys than Led Zeppelin. But we're like, oh, this is blues and this is country. It's like, well, Roscoe Holcomb is right in there, man. But oh no, that's country. That's another discussion.
Yeah, they divide so many different artists up, and then there's artists who have done so many different styles. Like, where do you put Frank Zappa?
Early on, they would tell Blind Willie would show up and he'd have these country songs, and they would say, no, we don't want you to record these country songs. And they'd have like the Skillet Lickers, who were the most influential string band in America from right here in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Nice.
And they had jazz too. They had double, kind of like what the Allman Brothers did later on with harmony and twin guitars. These guys were doing that with fiddles, and they came up with some sophisticated jazz arrangements. Wow. But they would go in, they were like, no, you got to do stuff. You got to do this real hillbilly. Put your hat up. Be stupid and because that's what you guys are. That's what we.
That's how we see you.
Yeah. But there's sometimes they would trick the A&R guy, or sometimes they would get something like, even the Skill Lickers had a couple of these jazz tunes that made it under the radar, in the 1920s.
Right.
So I got a question for you. And I'm going to preface it by a little bit of a story from, we both read a great book on Duane Allman recently. And his main influence for playing slide guitar was a cat who was playing with Taj Mahal. He was just a regular 60s rock guitar player, and he goes sees Taj Mahal and goes home and starts figuring out how to play slide guitar. And with Duane Allman, I mean, one of the greatest.
Jesse.
On the rock blues side. And
Jesse's Indian.
Was that a Taj Mahal's guitar player?
Jesse Edward. Yeah, he's an American Indian.
I couldn't think of his name.
He's at Smithsonian at the American Indian Museum.
Cool. Well, he played
Jesse Ed Davis.
So
he played on George Harrison's records, played on John Lennon's records, and played on what's it, Rod Stewart's records. They say that the theory is that Rod Stewart's the one that ruined him. Because they got all because they went on tour, got all strung out and stuff like that, and he couldn't handle it. Man. Man. But he knew all these guys because of Taj. Taj brought these guys in. There was the Rolling Stones circus, which has finally come out.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But they were all hanging out together there. They're like, who the fuck is this guy playing? And that's where like the Statesboro Blues, that slide part comes from, that the Allman Brothers took up later. That slide part, everybody's like, "What Allman Brothers?"
They took a Blind Willie McTell song and they added.
No, they didn't. Taj Mahal and Jesse Ed Davis did.
Oh,
they were the Ry Cooder and the Allman Brothers. They did the exact arrangement. They did the slide part and everything.
They copied their version.
If you listen to Blind Willie McTell, it don't sound nothing like that.
I know.
I love both of them. I love all of it. I love all of those. But a lot of people get mixed up because it's a Blind Willie McTell song, so they think Allman Brothers got it from But
now they got it. Well, I wanted to tell that story, or introduce that concept of Taj Mahal and the Allman Brothers, just to lead to a question. You've played with Dickie Betts and with Taj Mahal, haven't you? You've opened for them or toured with them?
we spent some time together, and I never toured with Dickie Betts. We spent some time together, and you know, he really he he, uh, he was kind of paternal, I guess. You know, we really hit it off, and you know, we spent some time together. And he like I thought, oh, this guy's famous. I don't want to bother him, but he would, you know, was like, hey, Mudcat, I want to show you something. Come over here.
I love his.
He said, go pick up your guitar, man. Let's do something. I was like, what?
I love his great Southern records, man.
Oh yeah,
just so good.
So what was it? What was that like playing with him?
Natural, really natural. And at the same time, it's like, wow, you know, it's like outside your body looking like, what am I doing, man? This is amazing. You know, this is the guy that I grew up on these records, and I didn't know, you know, they tell you that Dwayne is Dwayne has the reputation of being the slide player, but they're both slide players. And the stuff that they're both very different slide players. And the slide that I was keying in on, as well as also this, this Arabian kind of, I forget this scale that sounds kind of Arabian. I forget what it's called, harmonic minor. That stuff that was meant the most to me from the Allman Brothers, that was all from Dickie.
Oh, you know,
Dickie's playing that deeper slide.
There's when you go from Eat a Peach to that next album, like you listen to Southbound. I
listened to that today. That's funny.
It's not a huge jump. So Dickie Betts was very much a part of that sound. You know, even before it wasn't like it was all Dwayne.
Oh, no way. He's equal 100%.
Yeah. When you're playing with Dickie Betts and you're an established guitar player, you learned how to play, and you're sitting across from him or whatever, are you seeing things that oh my God, I never thought, or are you guys just playing and it's more of almost an equal, like he's playing to you, you're playing to him? How did that go?
Oh yeah, that's what I've said. That's why I say it's real natural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had the same. Yeah, it's because they're such great musicians. They give, and they're not like ignoring you or anything. I've played with musicians who just like it goes like this and hold on, you know. And I mean, like Taj would tell you hold on, but he expects you're gonna be there. And
yeah.
But I had a similar experience in Chicago at the Kingston Mines when we were on tour with Taj Mahal and the Music Makers. We played the Kingston Mines, and our special guest was Pinetop Perkins, who's Muddy Waters' piano player.
Yeah,
and you know, my favorite records. He's on those records that Johnny Winter did. I really love that whole set of records that Johnny Winter did and Muddy Waters.
Cardigan
and Pinetop's all there because he took over after Otis died.
Right, Otis Spann.
Yeah, so. You know, I bought some Pinetop. I knew that I was going to be backing up Pinetop Perkins in Chicago, so I went and bought a couple of extra records. I didn't have any of his solo records, you know, so I studied up and everything. And I was like, and I was all ready. And we got one song in, and the owner of the club comes up and goes, "Hey, Pinetop," because it's Pinetop, me, my bass player, and a drummer, you know, and then the MC comes up and says, "Hey, Willie Big Eye Smith is here," you know. So we did the entire rest of the set with the Muddy Waters drummer as well, you know. So it's just me and the bass player in between these two guys, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna hold on, and I'm just hold on. Hopefully, I can be here right for them. But it was way better than that. It was organic. They were listening, like he was They were reacting to what I was doing. And it's 100% organic. You know, it was beautiful.
It makes sense that as a musician, no matter who you are, maybe this new cat's got something that might wow me, and I might pick up on, you know, versus
and be open that we're playing music together.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, where it's an organic. Hey, let's create something to get. You know, that's fantastic. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Skillet Lickers. I know that they were all white.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a lot of white blues guys in that time, or were they told, no, you guys are a country band? Like you were saying, where they were told.
Oh, well, they weren't blues at all. I mean, they might play a blues form, you know, but no, they were very hillbilly. They were very hillbilly.
Oh, yeah.
One of the songs that, I don't mention them much anymore, because one of the first songs was "Run Nigger Run."
Yeah,
I'm like, whoa, okay, well,
that's the one I know by name.
You know, well, I didn't know that. I knew the other one that really influenced a lot of people was "Ragged but Right." You know, Merle Haggard and everybody took off with that one. That's gone through for many decades. "Ragged but Right," and I do that song sometimes. But once I run into that "Run Nigger Run," I was like, well, I'm gonna back off from these guys.
Yikes!
Even though I'd reached out to them, because they're on the 4th generation, they're still active.
Wow!
I've been putting on shows here, so I was in touch with the grandson of Phil Tanner. No, Phil Tanner is the son. So Gid Tanner's son, grandson or son. Anyway, I invited them like 20 years ago to play some stuff, and
they got a great song called "You Gotta Quit Kicking My Dog Around." That's the one I know by them. I like that one.
If you listen to the lyrics to a lot of these,
I can get behind that. You gotta quit kicking my dog around.
Yeah,
that's a good sentiment. The some of the lyrics to some of these old songs, even like beautiful mellow stuff like Mississippi John Hurt, you listen to the lyrics and he's talking about throw my body in the ocean when I die, you know, I mean, just
I'm gonna cut your throat.
Yeah. He's talking about his girl. She may cut you, may starve you too.
Yeah.
You know, telling what that woman might do is.
It's amazing how.
But there was a lot of stabbing and cutting.
Yeah, but it's all like low key and almost whispered, and you're like,
oh,
what is this song? And then if you start like listening to it, you're like, oh my god, you know.
Especially with him. Yeah.
He's close to the Piedmont style because he's doing that bass line at the same time, you know. He's real close. Yeah. He's doing that finger picking. Yeah. So he's real close to the Piedmont style, you know. But Piedmont style like really incorporates a lot. You know, that's why I was getting at that the culture, the societies, the Black cultures around the Piedmont area. It generally could tend to be more open and more, so there'd be other cultures included, and that was absorbed inside the music.
It's to me, it's all country blues. It's just usually one a soul singer with an acoustic accompaniment. Is that pretty accurate, or?
Oh, I like Brownie McGee, Sonny Terry. I like that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, Sonny Terry.
Harp and guitar. I kind of like that. I like two guitars. You know, Blind Willie McTell often worked with Curly Weaver, and they would have two guitars. Two guitar thing is you have the solo person, but you also have the two guitars that can really go off each other. You know, that's what. In fact, I saw Dickie Betts teaching while we were playing. Dickie Betts is teaching Derek Trucks about that. He's like, you know, he's like, yeah, we trade off. See what we do is like, now I'm playing the bass line, I'm keeping it going, and you're doing the stuff, and then I'm gonna give it to you, and you do that. And that's second guitar. And I saw him like telling him that while we're all playing. I'm like,
that's awesome.
That's great. That's beautiful.
Derek Trucks is amazing. That's another one.
Some of those cats played piano too, like Roosevelt Sykes, I think. It's like
Dirty Mouth.
Piano, yeah.
Big piano guy.
Dirty Mouth. That's what Corey Bryant used to call him, Dirty Mouth.
Dirty Mouth.
Dirty Mouth. Yeah, he's another one with the lyrics. He's another one with the lyrics for sure.
Yeah. Barrel house piano player. Double entendre.
Yeah.
A lot of those Piedmont guitar players were imitating that stuff.
Yeah.
Parlor piano, you know, the 90s, 1890s, you know. That was a real popular genre. Scott Joplin, all that stuff, you know, was
ragtime,
really popular. Yeah. So then when guitars got affordable, about 1900, you know, they started being they started people started getting in people's hands, pretty quick. And you can get them from Sears. They were real cheap, and you get them from Sears anywhere in America, just about. You can be way out in the country. Then all these people who could afford them, they most people that get an instrument, they give it up pretty quick, because they don't have the drive or the discipline,
Right. Sure.
So then you had like thousands of secondhand guitars out there, like real quick.
Oh yeah, they got
real cheap.
Yeah, real quick. So then, like, everybody's got a guitar that really wants one, and so they're imitating the piano players with that, which was popular music at the time that people were digging,
So with the advent of like that 60s British tour, all these young kids got record deals and jumped out, and it was like the 70s was saturated with like electric blues rock, which
we still suffer for today.
Yeah, I do agree, because yes, there's some amazing bands, Pat Travers, and some great stuff, but it's not blues.
It's easy in the voice when I really.
Yeah,
it's like, all right, get the fuck out, man.
But
like Frank Edwards, born in 1909 in Washington, Georgia. He said, he's my good friend and teacher, but he was like, yeah, them white boys can play, but they can't sing.
Yeah, well, because they're trying to imitate like Howlin' Wolf or something.
Only Tom Waits and Captain Beefheart can imitate Howlin' Wolf.
There you go.
Nobody else is allowed.
Like I love Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I always thought he was more. Yes, he was Albert Collins and Freddie King, but I always felt he was more Hendrixian than anything. That was just my take on it. But
that's Hendrix influence too, Albert Collins. So
yeah, right, yeah, very much a blues purist, Stevie Ray Vaughan, but. It's Texas rock and roll, if you will.
Man, we just saw what's his name, Edgar Winter.
Oh,
the other night.
I dig him
because he's in Ringo Starr's band right now.
Is he really?
And man, that dude, not only could he sing and play and everything, but he's an entertainer. When he gets up there on the mic, he sounds like, you can tell he spent all those years on the road in the 60s, because he knows how to talk to a crowd. He's just like, bam, 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 bam.
Firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, you're laughing at what he said 3 jokes ago, trying to keep up with him.
I love it.
That guy's really amazing. It's really great to see someone that, so he got famous, whatever, but also you could tell he spent a lot of time at the roadhouses,
Oh yeah, some rough areas and just doing it. Him and Johnny
today, they get the YouTube and everything. They can learn all this stuff. Like I was saying earlier, we didn't even have the reissues. We had very few reissues, and now you could Mississippi John Hurt, no problem. We got what song? We got 12 different people playing it on YouTube for you. Yeah. And we got all these tutorials and everything. We didn't have shit, man.
Yeah, you had to figure it
out. I'm not complaining, but it's like, there's a lot of we have to be careful about the hollowness of some of this stuff, and of a lot of it's especially today with the with the internet. It's like, man, these guys really look like they know it, but it could be just really empty and hollow, because it's all image or branding. Branding is more important than anything. I mean, I understand. I'm all into branding, because I need to, if you get it right, then that it really helps, if you think about branding, but branding is like where people are coming in, and that's how they. And now I'm gonna be an artist.
That's what they stop with.
Let me start with the branding, and then I'll be an artist.
Right. Yeah.
Then I'll figure out what art I'm gonna do.
Right.
If they even get to that. Some of them are just social media influencers, They got the branding and that's it, and they're an influencer.
But I think that's going to settle. I don't know where it's going to end, but it's going to settle. And,
I'd say
there's certain freedom now, because we're not beholden to the record companies,
Yeah,
We used to
That's
be
true.
we used to have a record deal, and very
yeah,
few
it's
would
all
have a record deal.
DIY.
Now
It's all-
anybody that's smart enough or lucky enough can figure out how to be out there, whatever.
yeah, I mean, the case in point is this podcast. This is our radio show, and we're not affiliated with clear
Thank God.
all
Clear
that crap.
channel. Yeah, well, I remember talking to somebody, I forget who it was, and they were talking about the difference between I think it was one of the people we interviewed. They were talking about the difference between having a record contract where you got like, I forget, it was a few cents on the dollar for every album that was sold, and now they get $10 for every album they sell. Because they're just selling it themselves.
Oh, because they're selling it themselves, right? I got you.
Patrick Kennison from
Uh,
Heaven Below.
Yeah.
But the record company would also have tour support and put your ad and
shitload more albums
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you told me to do this.
Okay. We'll keep it running.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, the what I was saying to Mudcat is you've got this electric blues thing that dominated the 70s, and they're bands that you and I fucking love, right? And then as you get into the 80s, you really got away from that that purity of music, and then it
still existed, but it went underground. You had to check out the punk rock and the indie alternative, Minutemen, Black Flag.
Yeah, but it was not readily available.
Yeah,
and I think you almost have a whole group of people that just got away from music. They've gotten older and now they're raising a family or whatever, and there's nothing on the radio that's really grabbing them, and they just missed out on all these bands. You and I were at the right age where that stuff in the 70s was still kind of in our past, but we were still coming up and we're still chasing after that next band. And there's just so much.
Then you have another generation in the 90s and the 2000s, this very blues influence with like John Spencer Blues Explosion, and then the White Stripes. You guys were talking about Jack White a little bit. And then R.L. Burnside just suddenly getting albums released out of nowhere.
Junior Kimbrough is another one that was
and
Junior
Kimbrough,
and Charlie. I can't. He's like an R&B. Kind of sounds like Otis Redding. I can't think of his name, but that's more R&B than blues. But
we're just talking about some of the stuff that happened in the 90s. You go from the 70s through the 80s and the 90s with Junior Kimbrough and R.L. Burnside and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, that movie, the Deep Blues, the book and the movie came out, and that was a big influence.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was saying Charles Bradley. Really good R&B, kind of Otis Redding style, really good R&B bluesy singer, Charles Bradley.
Tell us more about the Deep Blues movie and that you were.
Well, that had Junior Kimbrough and had R.L. Burnside. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry I can't remember the fellow from Alabama that wrote the book. I don't have the book. But he wrote the book, and he got the guy from the Eurythmics,
Dave
Stewart, and to help produce it. And they went through the hill country, and that's pretty. I think that's really why we begin to know the hill country music a lot better.
Are we talking about Blues historian Robert Palmer? Not the musician.
Robert Palmer, right. And before that, George Mitchell that came in there in 1961 and 1962, and he discovered R.L. Burnside. He came to find Freddie McDowell and record Freddie McDowell. He was a high school student with a little tape recorder, and he went to Mississippi searching out old. He just couldn't help himself. just searching out old musicians for his own pleasure, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
he just had a drive and a desire. This is George Mitchell. And he went out there looking for Freddie McDowell because there had been some records out by Freddie McDowell because
Mississippi Fred McDowell, right?
yes, because what happened, because the reason you have now I'm opening up the story even further, but the Mississippi Mississippi John Hurt, stuff like that, the recordings that were made in the 60s, what we call the folk revival, the blues revival, that actually started in the late 40s and in the 50s, you know. So we had some recordings by Freddie McDowell. George Mitchell goes looking for him, and well, his neighbor Freddie McDowell's neighbor is R.L. Burnside, and he's a younger man. He's a younger man, and he's been teaching him, and that's where R.L. you know got his stuff from. And R.L. knows Othar Turner. So they have the fife and drum music.
Nice.
And
Othar plays a lot of African flute stuff, right?
Yeah, the
fife and drum.
Fife and drum, which is a Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi tradition. You know,
that's amazing
for
stuff.
picnics and for other events, funerals, stuff like that. So, and that Jessie Mae Hemphill, she's related to Othar, I believe. So they have a meeting over to record at I guess McDowell's house, and McDowell invites all these musicians that we know their names now, but for them it was just a big party out in the woods, you know. And George Mitchell had his battery powered tape recorder out there and made some pretty powerful recordings. Made some books, you know. Hill Country Blues just came out about 10 years ago, I guess, the book. But he's from Georgia, you know. He recorded Buddy Moss in his older days as well, you know, in the 60s.
That Othar stuff, I've got a couple recordings of him, and it's just so different. I love it. It's very upbeat and almost like just bright sunshine kind of music.
Then you have James Davis, who was also born about 1909, something like that. But he took the fife and drum music and updated it because he played electric guitar, you know, a hollow body, and had a drummer, you know, not just playing the snare or not just playing the bass drum, because that's what they do. They have one person playing the bass drum with the fife and drum stuff, and then you have some, you know, other people playing snares. So, but what James Davis did was he just played what a flute would do on the slide, and played some chords, you know, like the snare would do, and had a drummer, so it was like sounded kind of modern. And he updated it, you know, and played instrumental, and he'd play every Saturday night up there in Perry, Georgia, and fill the place with young people. You know, that came directly out of the fife and drum music.
That's awesome. I would love to have been able to see some of that.
Well, he came, but I had him up at Northside Tavern a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
But he was 90 already.
Wow.
That's awesome that you were doing that.
I saw.
Well, nobody else was doing it, you know. And I had the backing of the owner, and it was crazy to me that you have these artists that I've been, you know, I'll be playing on the street, and I'd be getting into these older blues, and I'd look on the back of the Yazoo records. I was like, wow, they're doing the same thing I am, playing on the street, and these songs are cool as hell, you know. And then you realize that their friends are around, you know. You're talking about Blind Will McTell. Well, here's Curly Weaver's daughter, you know, she's inviting you over to the house, and now you're singing with, that's Cora Mae Bryant that she used to sing with me. Well, I used to back her up. How about that? But you know, and you realize that you're surrounded by all these people these performers, and none of them are working. You know, nobody's hiring them. So I was like, so we started hiring them at Northside Tavern. And you know, they could have a Chicago type of show, like Blind Willies would have their stable of artists, and they would do the hits, you know, and it was fantastic, really fantastic. You know, but what about Cora Mae Bryant, Neil Patman, and then these older people, Frank Edwards, you know, who invented blues, but he ain't had a gig in a while, quite a while. Well, it's like, Well, let's plug them in and see what happens. Well, tell you what, success. So
That's great.
win. Everybody wins. The city wins. The culture
Yeah.
wins. These people, their lives are extended because they're playing.
Yes.
They feel like they
have a purpose.
They
new
feel
breath
part
in
of.
their lungs.
They feel important to society.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
They have a purpose.
I saw Johnny Shines in.
They got young girls flirting with him. You know.
Yeah, I saw Johnny Shines in Georgia Tech, I believe, and Johnny Shines knew Robert Johnson, and they bring this old guy out. Like, we went not knowing what to expect, and I'm like, watch this not be Johnny Shines. Watch this be some new guy named Johnny Shines. But they bring him out and set him in, and he doesn't look like he knows where he's at. And then they put a guitar in his hand, and man, he lit up, and he played to a packed house, and he played all that old blues stuff. It was, to me, it was as if I was seeing Robert Johnson. You know,
his daughter has a festival every year.
Johnny Shines.
Yeah, Carolina Shines. She
Nice.
does Johnny Shines Festival every year.
In Georgia or where?
Birmingham, I believe.
Birmingham. Yeah.
That's cool.
Because he's from Alabama.
I got you. But like you said,
because Alabama has 1 foot in the Delta and 1 foot in the Piedmont.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like you said.
West Georgia is like that. Has a lot of Delta influence in West Georgia.
It breathes new life into some of these people. Gives them
purpose. I've seen so many people go downhill when they ain't got no gigs, ain't got no, my good friend Eddie Tigner, he was strong, vibe. You see him, like, he play one gig, then he'd be at your gig drinking. He'd be walking around. You see him on the street walking to the bank or whatever. He's out there all the time. But when they took away his car, when they took away his driver's license, then he had to move out of the city, out in the suburbs with his son, who's a great person, and they drive him everywhere he wants to go, but it's not the same, so he went downhill quick.
He's got to rely on somebody else. That's
then you see other people who were like kind of weak or whatever, but then they get some gigs and it's a purpose and they pick up. You should really check out Music Maker Relief Foundation. That's a story that's a story that's happened over and over and over again with Music Maker Relief Foundation.
Yeah.
Tell us about
Cootie Stark. He's one of the greatest Piedmont pickers I've ever met. He's from Greenville, South Carolina. He was, I think, born in 1926, and he learned from Baby Tate and Pink Anderson and the Blind Boy Fuller. He learned from these people, played on the street. Well, when Tim Duffy, the director of Music Maker Relief Foundation, met him, he was in Greenville playing in pizza place for like $50. He was playing fast domino songs. To him that was modern.
Right.
This was in the 90s, and he's like playing fast domino songs because that's the modern stuff. But Tim met him and brought him back to the Music Maker. It's a place to stay, and it's also a studio, and spent a lot of time with him. And all these songs, just dozens and dozens of songs immediately just started pouring out of him. Songs that 20s and 30s, some songs that none of us have heard before, but they're from the same, they started pouring out of him, and that guy, then he made like 3 records, toured the world a whole bunch, spent a lot of time here at our house whenever he was bored.
That's cool.
Yeah, whenever he was bored, he'd like, hey, Mudcat, if we ain't on tour another, he wanted to come stay in our back bedroom and come to all my gigs,
That's awesome.
Oh,
so tell us a little bit more about Music Maker Relief Foundation, and I want to respect your time so we can wrap it up in a little bit, but tell us about Music Maker Relief Foundation a little bit though.
Well, in 1990s, a fellow named Tim Duffy, who was a student at UNC in folklore. I don't know exactly what the genre, what it is that he was studying directly, but I know anthropology and folklore. And he was, to help pay for his school, he was doing substitute teaching. and some of his students started talking about this old musician that played music, Guitar Gabriel. And long story short, really beautiful story about, you know, to finally get close to Guitar Gabriel, who was at the drink houses with all the musicians up in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham. After epic trying epic stories, he finally became friends with Guitar Gabriel and was invited in the world of the drink houses and stuff like that. And Tim Duffy realized that these people like were creating some great art, and there's some amazing, you know, culturally significant things were going on with these people, but you know, they're living very destitute and nobody will ever hear this stuff. And they you know, they could barely. So Tim Duffy decided to start Music Maker Relief Foundation to help these people with their electric bills, with the medicine, with if they needed it, if they needed an instrument, if they wanted a career. Some of these people didn't want a career, you know. So it's if you do want a career, how far you want to take it? You want to make a recording, you want to tour, what do you want to do? Do you just need your lights on, you just need some groceries, whatever it is.
That's
you know,
fantastic.
You need some social work, you know, because you've been screwed by your pension, or you're in the ward, you're not in the army, and you're not getting, you know, your check you're supposed to get because, you know,
now
we'll help you with that too.
Can it be all the way down to maybe they're just lonely and need some damn interaction? Or
well, that's one of the great benefits of Music Maker Relief Foundation was people. Like I was just talking about Cootie Stark, 26, born in 1926. Well, I also spoke about Corey Bryant, born in 1926. Neil Patman, born in 1926. They're all far away from each other. You know, nowadays it takes about 2 hours to drive between the different places where they're all from. But back then, that was a long distance. You know, they didn't have highways and all that stuff. So these people came up of similar backgrounds, and they all had great artists as parents or teachers or whatever. But then they found themselves kind of alone, you know, kind of unique in the world. But then Music Maker brings them together, and they have a family. And they keep meeting people, keep meeting musicians and other people who have similar experiences, you know. So it becomes a great support. They're not alone anymore. Yeah.
That's great.
So that looks like that's online at musicmaker.org. We'll definitely drop that link on the website.
And they've in the past 10 years or so, they've really incorporated a lot of young artists as well. So that's a great thing.
That's cool. So if people want to check out your stuff, and you've recorded quite a few albums, do you have any favorite albums of yours that you would recommend people start with? Or are they like children where you can't choose a favorite?
Hey, baby. Yeah. What's my best record? My new one.
Your new one? Give us the title of that one.
No better chicken, but the flight school is a whole different animal.
I'm sorry, what?
Say what?
The new one, probably. How about that?
Right on.
Give us the title. What's the title?
Flight School.
Flight School. All right. So we're gonna have all of your stuff is not on Spotify. It looks like a lot of it is, a good chunk of it. But we're gonna have a Spotify playlist, Mudcat Spotify playlist. Check out Flight School if you want to check out one of his albums. What's your website? People want to find you online.
Mudcatblues.com.
Mudcatblues.com. We'll drop that link as well.
Yeah, go to Bandcamp. I've made 13 studio albums, I think. They got other stuff too. Everything's there.
All right.
For better, for worse. It's on Bandcamp.
We'll link to your Bandcamp page as well, for sure.
So we're gonna have a pretty extensive blues playlist for this episode, but we'll also, like he said, we'll do a Mudcat playlist in the hopes that each of these episodes, we want to introduce a new thought to maybe a new listener or somebody
Awesome.
not hip to blues can maybe get their toe in the water with this episode and maybe check out some of the names we've dropped and get into what they should. Blues is so important.
There are a lot of great young artists that are there's a whole crop of young artists right now that are really kicking butt that, I've been at it for a long time, and this is even Taj is really encouraged about it too. Seeing some of these young artists like John Tavius Willis, people like that. It's really amazing and encouraging to see these artists out there. That's exciting.
I like to hear that because you turn the radio on or flip through social media and you're like, good God, where is it going?
Yeah, because anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Anybody can have a station or whatever,
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered everything that I had notes on,
I think so. That was an awesome conversation. Thanks for taking the time out to humor us and share your experience with us.
Thanks for reaching out, guys.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to end the recording, but stick around for a little post-show wrap-up. It won't take long. We'll say goodbye to the listeners.
Bye.
Catch you cats on the flip side.
See you guys.